friends, and welcome back. My name is Deepa from DeeZinesByD, and today I have a Scrappy Tales post for you. So today I'm sharing this beautiful pink and gold card which features the Scrappy Tales Slimline Snowflake Cover Die. It measures 3.5 by 8.5, so you can use it for a slimline card, but you could also cut it down to make it work for you. So these are the products we're using. The first one here has a bunch of Christmas sentiments that you can foil. They're in various sizes. And then you also get the Slimline Snowflake Cover Die, and I'm going to be showing you how to extend the use of that in this video. So to start with, we are going to be adding a bunch of ink to this panel. Now this panel is 9 inches by 4 inches, and we're using distress inks here. So the colors we're going to be using are Saltwater Taffy, Victorian Velvet, Tattered Rose, and Kitsch Flamingo. And I just wanted to let you in on a quick little tip here. Now you can see that this is my Kitsch Flamingo, but it's actually a custom blend pad. And when I was buying this, they didn't have the pads in stock. So I actually just bought the custom blend pad, and I bought the re-inker and made my own ink pad. So there's a little tip for you if you can't find the ink that you're looking for, use the custom blends. But you can only do that for the distress ink. Now I'm also going to be using the Cosmic Shimmer, these are the Creative Expressions Pixie Sparkles. Now I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. I've just been introduced to them this year, and they are absolutely stunning. I've got Gilded Plum Boulevard Lights and Pale Blush here, but I'm probably just going to use the last two, Boulevard Lights and Pale Blush, because it works a little more with the color palette I'm looking for. So the first thing I'm going to do, you can see I've got my work area protected with that mat. I've got a large acrylic block. You don't need something this big, but as long as you have an acrylic block, that'll work. Or even if you had a palette, that would work. I'm just smushing the ink pad onto the acrylic block, and then I'm adding some water. That spray bottle, it just has plain water in it. Then I'm mixing it up and using my paintbrush just to grab it and splatter it all over the background. Now you're probably looking at this and saying, this is going to take absolutely forever. But I really have to just say, stick with it. When you build up color like this, it takes a bit of time, but the results in the end are much more stunning than just quickly adding the ink to the paper. So you can see I'm also kind of just taking whatever's left over on my acrylic ink pad and smushing it onto the paper. And as I'm doing this, the first thing I did was I added Tattered Rose, which was the lightest color, then the Victorian Velvet. Once I was done with that, I dried it up using my heat tool. Once that was dry, then I went ahead and I grabbed the Kitsch Flamingo. You can see that that's very pink, so be careful not to add too much because I wanted more of a softer pink, not a bright pink here. So I'll go ahead and add all of that. And then the next step would be to add the final color, which was the Saltwater Taffy. And you can see that that ink pad was really, really nice and inky, which is what I love. Most of my ink pads at the moment are very dried up, and I don't actually have the re-inkers, so I really have to invest in those. But you can see after I've added about a couple inks and splattered them on, I will dry the panel out just because I want to create a new surface to kind of soak up more ink. And keep in mind that I am using watercolor paper. I didn't mention that in the beginning. So watercolor paper is actually going to hold more of this wet ink versus a normal cardstock. So that's important to keep in mind. You'll get better results. So you can see here, I actually took the pale blush. I just kind of squirted it, the powder onto the acrylic block, added the water, and you can see it turned into a nice vibrant pink color. Probably thinking, I thought you said you wanted a lighter pink. You can see once I dry it here, it actually turns lighter, and it shows that beautiful shine of the mica within the powder. Now I'm kind of getting a little bit impatient and I'm deciding I want to really fill this background with the main color, which is the Tattered Rose and the Victorian Velvet. So I'm actually using the smushing technique here. I've just added the ink pads to my my mat there, and I added water, and now I'm just picking it up with the panel. I'm trying to grab as much of that ink onto the edges and into the center. You can see now that I've dried it, it's really picked up those colors. And now I'm going to go back to the splattering. So we're still going to add that extra detail. So now I'm adding the pale blush again. And the reason why I'm doing this color again rather than moving on to the next is because since we did the smushing technique, all of that mica and the shimmer that was on the splatters has kind of moved, because when you add more water to the panel, it moves the top portion of the that ink, which in this case happens to be the mica. So I'm adding the shimmer again, or the droplets of it, and then I dried it so you can see I get the actual little droplets that shine in the light. And I'm going to do the same thing with the boulevard lights. Now you can see that this actually makes like a darker brown color, but don't be worried about that. Once it dries, it will dry like the light gold. And now you can see here that final panel looks gorgeous with all of those layers of color. Now moving along, I've gone ahead and I've used that snowflake cover die to cut out 3 panels. So one was from some pink glitter cardstock, and you can see this kind of has like a bit of an ombre effect. And then you've got some gold matte cardstock and some vellum. Now, the last 2 pieces, I wasn't too careful to make sure I cut out the frame because we're going to be cutting them. So I'm showing you here, I've already cut all of the snowflakes out of the vellum frame. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut it out of the gold, and I'll show you how I did that here. It was pretty hard and kind of flimsy or finicky to kind of cut it out of the vellum. So I went ahead and I did that first to make sure that it works. And so now I'm going to show you how I did it here. Okay, so this is what I mean about extending the use of these beautiful cover dies. So the snowflakes on this are made in such a way that you can actually get full snowflakes out of it. So the ones that are close to the edge of the frame are there in such a way that it's only like a small portion of the edge of the snowflake that goes into the frame. So you can actually continue the pattern of the snowflake and cut that out using some fussy cut scissors like I'm doing here. It did take a little bit of time, but I would say at the most it took me 10 minutes to cut out both panels. So it really doesn't take too long. It is a little finicky. If you don't like that finicky aspect of it, then maybe you just kind of want to cut it off right at the edge, and then you can put these right up to the edge of your card and use it in a different way like that. So you can see here, I'm continuing the 3-prong of that the end of that snowflake. I'm just cutting around the edge into the frame, and then I'll finish up the 2 other portions of that prong. And at first it looks a little weird, but once I've cut it out of the frame, it's easier to work with, and then you can perfect your edges. Now, keep in mind, we're going to be creating layered flowers with this and the vellum. You're not going to see all of the little imperfections because the card is going to have a lot of things going on. Remember, we've got the pink glitter cardstock, we've got the gold, we've got the vellum, we've got the background. So don't be too worried about all the tiny little details not being perfect. And here you can see we have both of the gold matte snowflakes and the vellum cut out. Now, I'll go ahead and do the foiling of my sentiment. So this is the set. I actually just got it. And so you actually do have to cut apart the sentiments to foil them separately. You could actually foil them all together and then cut them out however you want. I'm choosing the Happy Holidays and the Let It Snow, which I thought was very appropriate. And I'm using some light pink foil here. Now, this is Spellbinder's foil, and they have 2 types of pinks. There's a pink and a bright pink, and I'm using the pink here because it actually is a little bit more pale than the bright pink and works better with my background. So I'm just basically putting the foil on my cardstock, adding the plate, and then kind of cutting off the excess foil. I do kind of tape it down with some washi to get it in the right position. And the cardstock I'm using is Hammer Mill cardstock, which is perfect for foiling. It usually gives the best results. Now, even though I use the Hammer Mill, you can see I have some overfoiling here, and don't worry about that. I'm going to show you how you can get rid of it. So the trick to overfoiling is to have this Couture Creations detailer tool. It's actually just a spinning eraser. You could also use a Tombow mono eraser, but this is a nice small eraser, so you can get into smaller nooks and crannies. And because it is an electric machine, it spins and does a lot of the work for you, so you don't accidentally go over the foiled portion. I find that sometimes when you erase over the foiled portion, you or like the good part of your image, you end up kind of removing some of the shine. So I really like this tool. If you're somebody who does a lot of foiling like I do, I really recommend investing in it because it comes with extra erasers and everything. You can always change them out, and they last a long time. I will vouch for that. So you can see it nicely removed all of that overfoiling, and our panel looks like perfect now. Now I actually have these banner dies. I'm sorry, I don't know where they're from. They're pretty old. They're from back in the day when I used to kind of separate all my dies from the packaging. God knows why I did that. And then I wouldn't write down where they were from. So you could use any banner die that you have on hand. I'm going to do partial die cutting here. For the first sentiment, I'm doing partial die cutting to make my banner a bit longer, because if you saw there when I placed it on top, it actually goes over the sentiment. So I kind of lined it up, got the tail of one end where I want it, and I put it through my die cutting machine halfway. So this is my small sidekick machine. I'll line it up again. You can see that the top and the bottom of the banner kind of fit nicely into the notches of where we've already cut it on the left side. Then I'll line up the tail on the right side, and then I'll cut it halfway again where it goes fully into where it was cut initially, so that the whole image is cut out. Now for the second sentiment, I'm going to be doing partial die cutting, but in this case, I'm going to do partial die cutting to get a smaller banner. So I'm lining it up where I want it on my left side. You're just following the same principle here. You're just making sure you line things up where you want them. Now I kind of lined it up and it was a little off. It wasn't completely straight. So I kind of took it out, redid it, put it through halfway. Then once I've got it halfway, I'll remove the die, place it kind of in the nooks and crannies, like the cut that's already there for the top and bottom of the banner, and then line up the tail on the right side. So again, it's the same process, but in the end, you're just going to end up with a smaller banner rather than a longer one. So now I'm actually going to cut down this inked up background here. Now, if you recall, I said it was 9x4, but I'm just going to go ahead and cut off about 1/4 of an inch from two of the sides, from the width and the length, just to make it a little bit smaller so I can actually mat it. So in that way I can add some of the gold matte, which is going to match with the gold matte snowflakes, and that will tie everything in together. Now for my actual card base, I've got to actually take an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of white cardstock. I'm going to cut it down at 9 inches. I'm going to score it at 4, fold it over, and then cut off the extra bit. That's how I do all of my card bases. I really don't measure any of that. Now I'm grabbing my gold matte cardstock. This is Sizzix Opulent cardstock, and I tend to use it for a lot of my stuff. I'm cutting that down to the size of this card base. So that's again 9x4. I'm going to attach this, simply just to add some Tombow Mono tape runner and attach it. Now I normally would have cut out the center to kind of preserve some of this beautiful cardstock and not waste my money, but I completely forgot. But I would recommend doing that so that you still have, you get use out of it, because all of that pretty cardstock's just going to get covered up. So now I've gone ahead and added all of this foam to the back of that snowflake cover die. I've used foam strips. I've used these tiny little foam squares, which come in handy for intricate dies like this. And I mean, if you don't have the foam like I do, you could go ahead and cut out maybe 5 or 6 of these die cuts to get that same dimension. Just cut it out of some plain white cardstock and layer them behind the pink glitter cardstock. Now I'm just going to attach this to the inked up panel, and I'm really, really happy with how that. So here's a little tip. Now recall, we used watercolor cardstock for this, and it has a tendency to warp once you add all the ink. It is nice and thick, so it really shouldn't, but if you haven't taped it down, it will. So the first thing you want to do is make sure when you're heating it to dry everything, you heat it in the front and the back to get it flat. If that doesn't work, just run it through your die cutting machine in between the acrylic plates, and that should also flatten it out. Now I'm also adding some really strong double-sided adhesive here. Now this is really going to flatten it out when it's put on my card as well. So what I like to do is to take off the adhesive backing from just 1 or 2 of the pieces. I'll attach it to my card base so I can get it where I want it. That way, if I want to move it, it's easier to take off rather than having everything attached. Then I'll reach in and remove the rest of the release paper and attach it fully. So you can see that turned out pretty nice. So now I'm going to go ahead and use some foam squares to attach the sentiment strips or the banners. And I'm pretty much just trying to get it at the same level as the pink snowflake cover die here. So remember, that was attached with foam, so I do have to use foam to attach it here. I added a little bit of glue because part of this is sitting on the snowflake, which is already raised for the sub-sentiment, let it snow. And now I'm going to start layering my snowflakes. So for any portion that's going to sit on the pink snowflake that's already there, I just add some liquid glue. Anything that doesn't have anything below it, so it's kind of raised, I add a bit like a foam square. So I'm going to be doing these layers having the vellum in the background, so it kind of mutes the pink a little bit, and then I'll put the matte gold snowflake on top, so that really kind of stands out as like not really a focal point piece, but kind of like an element, an extra element to the card. So I always like to kind of have a nice background and then a few elements that stand out in the front with the sentiment. I always find that that kind of recipe for a card works best. So I'll just go ahead and keep doing this, adding the snowflakes that I cut out, and you can see that you don't really see any imperfections. Like, I can't see any imperfections in the snowflakes, but it works really nicely. So now we're not only using that snowflake cover die for the background, we can now cut out these snowflakes and you can use it on top of this frame. You could cut them out and make a completely different card with snowflakes. It's completely up to you, and you're only using one die. So you're totally saving on the cost of just going out and buying a whole set that's just snowflakes, right? And I don't know about you, but I absolutely love anything that's going to save me some money and extend the use of products that I already have in my craft room or new products that I'm buying, like this one. So now I'm going to put the last snowflake on here, and you can see I used an odd number. That's just kind of the rule of art, to use odd numbers because they're more aesthetically pleasing, and that means that I have 2 extra snowflakes that I can just kind of stick on the inside of my card. Now, I didn't stamp out a sentiment here because I couldn't find something that worked in the moment, but eventually I will stamp out a nice Christmassy or holiday sentiment on the inside, and I have those 2 cute little snowflakes on the bottom left to kind of tie everything in. Okay, so dun 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 dun, my favorite part, the embellishments. Did you guys know that Scrappy Tales has a lot, like I mean a lot of embellishments that they're now selling? I like to refer to myself as like the embellishment queen. I don't know. I love embellishments. I know there's a ton of other people out there that love embellishments, and these are gorgeous. So definitely do check out the Scrappy Tales site. There's a link in the description below. There's a ton of embellishments that you can buy. They actually have these cute little tins for winter embellishments. You get a whole bunch of them in one tin. So I really, really do recommend checking that out. So you can see I'm adding this mix of embellishments all over my card, to the center of the gold snowflakes, to the center of the pink snowflakes, into the background, on the banners. And it's such a nice mix that works well together. So you really don't have to kind of go and mix and match the embellishments that you have. It's all kind of thought out for you already. Now, this mix here is called, I think it's called the Gold Mix. Now, I've got all of the products that I've used today linked in my blog, which is linked in the description below. So click that link or go straight to the store. You'll probably find all of this stuff there. And it's just gorgeous. You've got gold metallic gems, you've got clear gems, and you've got like silver pearl gems in this set. And that is the final card that I have for you today. Now, I really hope that you can take this idea and not only use it for this die, but maybe some other dies that you may have. And don't forget to please like and subscribe if you've liked my video. I will have more inspiration coming soon. I hope you guys all have a great day. And please, 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 if you guys are planning on buying this and you were inspired by me, go ahead and click the Shop Scrappy Tales link in the description below. It's an affiliate link. It gives me a bit of a commission at no extra charge to you, and just really, really helps me keep pumping out these videos for you. So have a great day. See you guys next time. Bye.